The Hamas-controlled health ministry says an airstrike has killed dozens of people at Al-Maghazi refugee camp in central Gaza. The camp is in the evacuation zone where Israel had urged Palestinians to relocate to. Israel says it is investigating the claim. It comes after the United Nations reported that a school it runs in northern Gaza was also hit by a strike. Gazan health authorities reported 15 people were killed and dozens wounded, with thousands of displaced Palestinians sheltering in the school buildings.
A sense of anger and despair is palpable in the aftermath of this round of Israeli airstrikes. They struck a UN-run school being used as a refugee shelter at Jabalia in northern Gaza.
I was standing here when 3 bombings happened. I swear, I carried the body. Then I carried a decapitated body with my own hands.
Where should we go? They hit the shelters. People on the street are hit while walking. Since when has it become normal to strike shelters? This is not fair. You walk on the street, you get hit, while you're carrying a dead body to bury. They hit us.
The Israel Defense Forces are conducting what they called targeted incursions into southern Gaza, as well as pressing ahead in the north.
We led hard fights inside the Gaza Strip. We've finished and completed the encirclement. IDF forces are operating from south and north of Gaza City and entered populated areas to do so.
With Gaza City entirely surrounded, Israel's military announced a 3-hour window in which people could leave along an evacuation route. But some of those who tried claim it wasn't possible.
The road was damaged because of bombings and swollen dead bodies on the street. Maybe they've been dead on the street for 2 or 3 days. So we turned back at high speed because we felt like it was a trap.
Israel claims to have killed several Hamas commanders and says it is making significant progress. Israeli authorities are also still telling people to move south where they say it's safer. But with no let-up in the bombing, many Palestinians feel there's nowhere safe to go.
US Secretary of State Antony Blinken has held talks with Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas in Ramallah on a surprise visit to the West Bank. Blinken told Abbas that the US was against the forced displacement of Gaza's residents and committed to getting aid to them. The Palestinian leader repeated his calls for an immediate ceasefire. The US continues to push for brief humanitarian pauses, saying that a full truce would give Hamas time to regroup. For more, I'm joined by Boris Vormann, a political scientist from the Bard College here in Berlin. Welcome to you, Boris. US Secretary of State Antony Blinken met with Jordan and Egypt's foreign ministers yesterday, and today he's made a surprise visit to the West Bank. He's doing a lot of talking. What's he actually trying to achieve?
I think a number of things. I mean, as we just heard and as we know from the media reporting, it's a very complicated, very difficult situation. He's, I think, trying to, first of all, prevent an expansion of the war, so de-escalate. At the same time, he's pressing in his different visits for a pause to the fighting so that humanitarian aid can happen. And then I think he's also having conversations with different leaders, and they're thinking about what could be a possible post-war regime.
When it comes to negotiating a ceasefire or humanitarian pause, how much leverage does the US have on Israel?
Well, it's difficult. Again, I mean, everything in this conflict is very complicated. In the US, yes, there is relative support for Israel, and there has been a long tradition, obviously. The Republicans have passed legislation in the House that is supposed to bring military aid to Israel, but under the condition that it's unfunding at the same time the Ukraine war. So there's a limit to the bipartisan support. At the same time, Biden is struggling with his own party, where you have progressives who are arguing that he should, try and pull out and not support Israel and support the Palestinian cause instead. So it's a very tricky situation, and Biden at home, I think, is facing a lot of pushback.
It's a very tricky situation, and it doesn't get any easier. Next stop for Mr. Blinken is Turkey. Its leader, President Erdogan, has recalled his ambassador to Israel over the war in Gaza and has ceased formal communication with Benjamin Netanyahu. Why is Blinken going there?
I think these are two reasons why he's going there. At the same time, I think he will ask for moderation on the part of Erdogan and Turkey. Erdogan has called the Hamas a liberation group. And so I think there's been a lot of debate about that. And I think what Blinken is going to try and do is also to talk about the rapprochement with the EU that Erdogan had been seeking in the last couple of months. Also, the US was supposed to deliver F-16 fighter jets. So I think there's another debate that he will use probably as leverage to try and get some concessions from the Turkish leader.
Boris Vormann, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Let's bring in Ahmed Bayram. He's a spokesperson for the Norwegian Refugee Council, joining us from the Jordanian capital, Amman. Ahmed, the Israeli army has once again given civilians in the Gaza Strip a time window to flee to the south. What are conditions like in northern Gaza, and are conditions any better in the south where they are being told to go?
Thanks for having me. It's very hard. It's virtually impossible to move around Gaza at the moment. Moving from north to south brings with it lots of risks. A lot of people I've heard have moved to the south only to find the conditions just as appalling, with overcrowding, with competition for resources, with competition for water, food, and then they have made that decision to go back to the north again. What we are saying is that not only there is no place for these people to be crammed into, because this is what it has come down to, there is no safe space, and homes and shelters have been actually bombed in southern Gaza as well.
Relief supplies have been waiting at the Rafah border crossing now for days. How much aid is actually coming through to Gaza, and how many people can you actually help with that amount of supplies?
Very little. I mean, Gaza has had less than 200 trucks crossing from Egypt. Gaza needs hundreds every day. With the pressing needs that we see on the ground unfolding, the crisis, the tragedy unfolding by the minute. There are teams on the ground who are equipped and ready to provide that support, whether that is UN agencies, whether that is organizations like NRC. We have 54 people, despite the tragic losses that they have sustained and have suffered. They are ready to mobilize and ready to offer support. We have been trying to give some cash support for people to go to the shops and get what they can get. However, there is very little on the ground, and people are telling us that, they are down to the last glass of clean water. People are drinking contaminated, polluted water. Children are being given a biscuit. My colleague this morning had to walk hours to just grab some biscuit for children there. It is a tragedy unfolding, and I think even in northern Gaza, for example, aid has come down to virtually nothing, really. What we need is not just a humanitarian pause. We need a ceasefire now, and we need these trucks to come flowing into Gaza and save people.
Ahmed Bayram from the Norwegian Refugee Council, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.